Ocarina of Time a necessity for gracious living? As the single-handedly most critically successful video game of all time, it is no wonder this essential title is brought up so much. This action-adventure game for the Nintendo 64 would receive multiple awards and accolades for its visuals, gameplay, music and writing, serving as a benchmark for interactive entertainment. When it comes to the game that helped set a new industry standard, like any incredible creation, Rome was not built in a day, which brings me to this game's murky origins, which we shall be covering today. While not arriving in Japan or North America until November of 1998, and not arriving in Europe until a month later, development in one shape or form for such a title began as early as 1995. Keeping this in mind, in this special upload we will celebrate the developmental stages of this game's creation and look at how different things were at one point. So with all of this said, I am Lady Decade and this is the lost 1995 version of Ocarina of Time. 1995 was a significant year for the Big N, whereby the Japanese company would heavily and publicly outlay many of their plans regarding how they intended to tackle the future. As was tradition for the company, many of Nintendo's key products would be introduced, revealed or demonstrated at their yearly press event known at the time as Shoshinkai. This annual occasion in 1997 would be rechristened as SpaceWorld, but before that fateful year, 1995 was extremely exciting in itself. While only the press were invited to the early events, by 95 these events had expanded so the general public could attend too. The 1995 event at the Makahari Messe Convention Center in Chiba, Japan went down in history for its electric atmosphere involving hordes of Japanese school kids immersing themselves in Nintendo fever. Shoshinkai 95 was historic for the public unveiling of the Nintendo 64, along with 13 games that were set to appear on the hardware. There were even playable demos at the event, including an early beta version of Super Mario 64, which we have covered on this channel before, and Kirby Bowl 64, a cancelled game that would never see a commercial release. But what for the Zelda 64 demo? Interestingly, little to no progress had been made on a Nintendo 64 Legend of Zelda game, but that didn't stop a Zelda 64 from still making an appearance. Instead, the footage would be shown of a 3D polygon model of Link, who I may add looks nothing like the Link who would appear in the Ocarina of Time, fighting against a metallic shaded knight in armour. This technical and thematic demonstration video would be reported on within Next Generation magazine, with the publication hyping that the eventual Zelda 64 game would be released for the Nintendo 64's bulky upcoming Nintendo 64 DD storage device. While plans would change with cartridge technology moving on and the 64 DD becoming redundant very quickly, the rest of the magazine's reporting would pan out to line up with what would happen. They would write, "The fact is that the videotape sequences shown at Shoshinkai bear very little resemblance to what the final product will actually look like. Spectacular scenes of a surprisingly large Link clad in polished armour are most likely to end up in cutscenes rather than representing the actual play." Lasting just 12 seconds in length, the model used in the demo is based on depictions of Link in his NES artwork. Which raises the question, why does this Link look so very different? Later we were to learn that the technical demo was created by Giles Goddard, a British video game developer who started programming on his ZX Spectrum and later his Commodore Amiga. Creating Amiga demos, even back then he was experimenting with 3D wireframe graphics with filled polygons. Leaving school before even finishing his A-levels, he would join Argonaut Games, where he would port Stargazer 2 to the Macintosh SE. This is obviously the same Argonaut who produced 3D graphic demos for the humble NES, who would later help create Star Fox. Goddard worked on Star Fox in Japan at only 18 years old, and would remain working with Nintendo in the Nintendo 64 era. Goddard would be responsible for programming Mario's face in Super Mario 64, achieved by getting painted ping pong balls and attaching them to his face before using an indie camera to track their motions. But what for the Zelda 64 demo? Goddard states, "When they were just first developing the prototypes for Ocarina of Time, I think they just wanted to show something. Because they announced the game and they wanted to show that they actually had a game there, even though they had nothing. So we knocked up a game with Yoshiaki Koizumi-san. We knocked up a little demo of him fighting a metallic character with all these effects going on to show off. All these demos were always showing off some new bit of tech, and I think at that point it was floating real-time lights. We had 3 lights that were swinging around, particle effects and environment mapping." In a tweet from the past, Goddard reconfirms that he programmed the sequence with Yoshiaki Koizumi, creating the models and animation. In his own words, the demo was to show what a Zelda 64 game could potentially look like. So, does this bring Goddard's Zelda 64 story to a conclusion? Well, no. In an interview on the YouTube channel MinMax, Goddard raises that he recently found an old source code directory consisting of the first map of Hyrule Castle that he was experimenting on. Goddard mentions he was performing experiments on it whereby the player could have a portal they could look through and then use to teleport to a different part of the map. He states he showed it to friends later at work who told him he needed to put the demo on the internet. However, Goddard notes that he sadly cannot, due to it being the property of Nintendo. The demo reportedly functioned as research and development for the game. Goddard stated that when the game Portal was released in 2007, he instantly noticed that he had such a concept running previously on the Nintendo 64. Rather than a portal gun, in Goddard's Ocarina of Time demo, the portals were created with spinning crystals that could be picked up and moved around, where if you spanned them, you could see through to a different part of the map. This raises the question, why were these innovative features not in the game? Goddard doesn't believe that the core team who worked on Ocarina of Time likely even saw his demo, with the Ocarina of Time being such a massive juggernaut that moved on its own course. The key devs would have probably felt the concept was cool, but implementing it into the game would have likely caused disruption to the critical creative process. Goddard also raises that he managed to get light mapping working on that same Zelda map, which he was inspired to create after seeing a similar feature in the game Unreal. The incredible lighting in the game meant that the projectiles would light up corridors when players shot their guns. His demo in the Zelda map would allow players to go around shooting coloured balls, but he notes the mechanic was both slow and memory intensive. More minor things he experimented with were water reflections and more, presenting a range of Ocarina of Time development features that we, the general public, have never seen with our own eyes. Just wow. The following year, 1996, a 14-second trailer of the game would be shown off. While this version looked much closer to the game we would eventually receive, everything still seemed very different. From Link's different costume to Link getting the Triforce and more, not one area shown in the demo made the final cut. But it is a demo version intended for the following year, where things get really interesting again. In January of 2021, a group of video game preservationists got their hands on a partial beta version of the game that is believed to have been intended for use at SpaceWorld 1997. Forest of Illusions has documented some of the content on the beta cartridge. There is so much on here that such a find could effectively function as a standalone video in its own right. But today's video revolves around the 1995 tech demo and the creator's subsequent Zelda 64 Portal demonstration that he created. Interestingly, many incredible artifacts from gaming's past are still yet to be published online. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time may be one of the most important games in history, but we are still learning more about its creation as time moves forward, even though it was released 25 years ago. If you enjoyed this video, why not subscribe and check out my video on the Lost Ocarina of Time remake. See you soon.